Well, listeners, in case you didn't get enough sports today, here's an ad break that'll tell you how to watch even more sports. YouTube is the new home of NFL Sunday Ticket. And if you sign up now, you'll get our lowest full season price of the year. Just go to youtube.com/presale to get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket. Watch your favorite teams out-of-market Sunday afternoon games, exclusively on YouTube and YouTube TV. All right, enough about sports. Go get more sports. Terms and embargoes apply. Offer ends June 6th. No refunds.
NIL Now with Lauren Sisler and Kevin Jones.
If you want to learn more about name, image, and likeness, you need to go to The Source. The NIL Now podcast from Headline Studio and Reddit highlights the biggest storylines with comments from key guests in the college and high school NIL space.
NIL is not a cherry on top. It needs to be thought about as a part of these young men and women's future to, further their careers. You should be able to leave college with something.
Subscribe to NIL Now on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
It is Thursday, May 4th. Hard to believe. I mean, we are already just a few days into the month of May. We have wrapped up the NFL draft. We gave our winners and losers from the Bengals offense and defenses. If you missed those podcasts, go to cleveland.com/podcast, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, you name it. We got those pods for you. Today, we're going to kind of branch out, though, and focus on more than just the Bengals offense. We're going to look at the top 7 passing attacks in the AFC. We chose 7 because there's 7 teams that make the playoffs from each conference. So granted, who knows, maybe these 7 teams are the teams that make the playoffs next year. I would think at least 80% of them would. So here we go. Welcome into another Strictly Stripes podcast edition, joined by Muhammad Ahmad, yours truly, with Mike Neislick and Andrew Gillis. So the order we have set up is we're going to go 1 through 7. So the number 1 passing attack all the way to the number 7 passing attack. Again, this is in the AFC, not the NFL. This is in the AFC. So Mike is going to go first, then Andrew, then me, and we're going to keep doing that order until we get through the 7th team. So really just kind of just jumping into it. Mike, like I said, you're going to be the first guy just from thinking about, best quarterbacks out there and the receiving duos. Who would you say is the top passing attack in the National Football League?
Well, I thought we're projecting for picking going forward. So, what they get from draft and free agency as well.
Right.
I would pick the Chargers number 1. Justin Herbert, I think, is as good as any quarterback out there. But then their skill players, as impressive of a group. They were 3rd in passing last year. They add Quentin Johnston in the first round TCU receiver. They have Mike Williams, Keenan Allen still, underrated tight end, and Gerald Everett. I'm not sure what they're going to do with Eckler. Obviously he was a big reason why that offense went. He had 1,600 total yards last year from scrimmage. Somebody that, from a trade perspective, I think would fit what the Bengals are looking for. But depending on what they do there, that could take a hit. But really like what that offensive core is. Obviously, I think as good of a group as there is.
It's interesting. I guess, obviously, so they drafted what? It was Quentin Johnson? Is that who they selected in the first round?
Yeah.
So I guess, them picking Johnson, how much did that kind of factor into your decision, Mike? Because I think that's very interesting.
Well, it gives them, a pretty impressive three receiver set with Williams, Allen, and Johnson. I mean, Allen and Williams were, I think, with the highest paid receiving duo in the league last year.
Mm-hmm.
Statistically a little down last year, but I mean, they're getting the ball to all those different guys. I think you have to take some, you have to sacrifice your personal numbers when you have, same with the Bengals, when you have all those options. But I think Justin Herbert, really can't go wrong in distributing the ball. I just think it's an impressive group.
And depending on whether it's Burrow or Herbert, one of those two is going to be paid big time this offseason. We don't know who's going to get paid more, but I mean, you look at that, and yeah, the Eckler situation is interesting. I like the point made about the Bengals. I've seen people kind of talking about that, but I don't see a trade scenario happening anytime soon. But Andrew, what do you think? Do you tip your hat to the Chargers and say you are going to be the best passing team in the AFC next year?
Well, I think they're probably from top to bottom, they're probably the most talented. I think you can look at just from the quarterback situation, you could kind of make a case that that Herbert belongs in that conversation with Burrow and with Allen. I don't think that that's necessarily insane. So you have a really good quarterback. And then, like Mike said, you've got Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. And I know Mike Williams has been injured, but you've got guys that can go get the football. And, obviously this isn't play a huge part in this, but I mean, your fourth receivers, Joshua Palmer, you drafted Darius Davis, Quentin Johnston's teammate from TCU, who's a little bit smaller but kind of stretches the field. At tight end, they don't really do anything for me. Gerald Everett, I don't know.
But 58 catches, career high of receiving yards. I mean, it's the same thing where the Bengals. Maybe it's not a name, but they elevate it just based on how they use them and based on those other receivers. So, I mean, he lived up to what they needed him to do. So, I mean, I don't. He's been around the league. Well, I think 6 years now. Not a flashy name, but somebody that obviously can get something done.
Yeah, I think. I think that their depth receivers. You have Joshua Palmer, you have Davis, you have Guyton. I mean, that's a really, really deep receiving core. It's I think there's a reasonable case to be made that who's better, the Bengals or the Chargers in their receiving depth. But I think it's pretty undeniable that the Chargers are deeper. I kind of like what they've done. They've got some proven NFL guys that are at the bottom of that depth chart. So yeah, I mean, the Chargers are going to air it out this year, and they're going to obviously be really successful doing it.
So, Andrew, who's going to air it out the most after the Chargers? Who do you have as the second best passing attack offense in the AFC?
If we were doing this and I had the number one pick, I take the Chiefs. I take the defending Super Bowl champions. You have Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes had a 67% completion percentage last year. He threw for 5,200 yards, 41 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He's the best player at his position. He's probably the best player in the league. I know there's some case to be made for, like an Aaron Donald or something like that. But, I mean, he doesn't turn the ball over very, very much. He throws all over the yard every week. He's so good. And it's just kind of hard for me to – we're going to get down the list and we're going to have some kind of interesting conversations, I think, with how you evaluate a team that maybe has some receivers, but maybe the quarterback is a little lacking. I don't know. I take Mahomes because not only do you have Mahomes, you have Travis Kelce. So you have you have a guy who, is pretty much guaranteed 100 plus catches, 1,250 yards at least. He had 1,300 last year. He's the best tight end in the game. You have the best quarterback in the game. And I think it's kind of unfair to think of Kelce in the same mold as the Bengals think of Irv Smith or the Chargers think of Everett. They're two completely different players, and Kelce's so good. So, you have him. You lose Juju this offseason, but you still have MVS. They just signed McKinnon. I think they're hoping for big things from Sky Moore in year 2. They draft Rashee Rice in the second round. They've got some young talent, but again, I think we've kind of seen that it doesn't particularly matter when who you throw out there with Patrick Mahomes, because he's going to succeed with whoever he's got.
Well, does it though? Because I think with Sky Moore, we didn't really see much from him last year. If you look at his stats, I mean, he really only had 22 catches, 250 yards, started 3 games. Which is because I think there were times where he just made a lot of mistakes, he fumbled 3 times. I mean, really the most success he had, I think, was on special teams, like that punt we saw at the AFC Championship game. I mean, I don't know, do you think he makes that big step up? Plus, I mean, we don't know about Rashee Rice. He's a rookie. Do you think he could do the same thing without Juju Smith-Schuster or Tyreek Hill?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I don't think, I don't think it's necessarily fair to throw anybody in the Tyreek Hill bucket just because that's a really, really high bar to climb.
Right.
You look at last year. I mean, the Chiefs had, you had Hardman and you had Juju kind of above him. So I think, you need somebody just a split second that can get open, and Patrick Mahomes is going to find him. Cause like I said, he's the best quarterback in the game. And it's just kind of hard for me to look past that and say, yeah, I have to turn down a Patrick Mahomes for whatever reason. I just, the receiving core is I think talented enough. You obviously have the best tight end in football, and you have the best quarterback in football, and that's kind of where I figured I'd go with it.
Mike, do you sense a little bit of a too much of a Patrick Mahomes bias, or do you think Andrew makes a strong case for the Chiefs at number 2?
Well, I think one of the reasons you'd pick the Chiefs over even the Chargers is their coaching staff situation with Andy Reid, that offense, the way he's able to. I think that's why you don't worry as much about the receivers, because he's able to sort of make it all work no matter what the personnel is. So, I think that's a big factor why. I just picked the Chargers because of the talent pool available there is much, especially with receiver. The Chiefs, who their starting 3 is, I guess, would be MVS, Moore. I don't know who the third would be, to be honest.
I guess either Tony or Rice. I guess Kadarius Toney's in the mix.
So, you look at that compared to the Chargers, that was kind of the difference maker for me. But I don't think that they'll, I don't think they'll stumble. I just think it's a matter of, I chose talent over the abundance of talent versus just Mahomes and Kelsey, where I think, they're lacking in the other positions.
Plus, obviously, Eric Bieniemy leaves. He goes to Washington and takes the same job that he was in KC as the offensive coordinator. So now it's Matt Nagy. Unsurprising elevation given his experience. We'll see how different or not different the offense is with him next year. But, yeah, I like where we're going with this. So I guess yours truly has the number 3 one. And by the way, I'm not saying this with any bias with this being a Bengals podcast. I think objectively this is the number 3 passing attack. I think it's the Bengals. Someone was going to say it. And I think honestly, and I'll get your all's thoughts on this, but you got to put him at number 3. Like, he thinks, we've talked about Joe Burrow, we've talked about Jamar Chase, we've talked about T. Higgins. Now the question is, like Zach Taylor was talking to Solomon Wilcots on a podcast today, and he said this to us last week, like Irv Smith can fit that role of Hayden Hurst. Now maybe he's just saying that, and he's not to compete for that starting role. But at this point, since they didn't draft a tight end, I think you almost have to say he's going to be the starter. Does he fill those shoes? I don't know. He struggled with a lot of injuries in Minnesota. It's a big reason why the Bengals got him for so cheap, was because they probably looked at him and said, hey, like, you haven't been healthy most of your career. Here's a 1-year prove-it deal, like they gave to Hayden Hurst. But I don't know, though. Just do basic kind of history, like look at C.J. Uzomah, elevated with Burrow. Didn't play that good with Dalton until Burrow came. Hayden Hurst, one of the best years of his career with Burrow. So I would think, unless injuries or some weird thing catches up, I don't see why Irv Smith can't do that. I don't see why Jamar Chase doesn't have another 100 catch season, another 1,000-yard receiving season. Higgins, I think, goes for, if not 1,000, because obviously he filled in for Chase last year. He's going to get at least 800, which is great for a number 2 receiver in an offense with Joe Burrow. And then here's the thing, like, I've said this many times again and again, but like we have to reiterate this. Joe Burrow hasn't had a true offseason. Rookie year, COVID restrictions. Second year, if you want to call it sophomore year, which is being funny. Second year, he's recovering from the torn ACL. And he just about had it last year until his appendix said otherwise, which I definitely think affected the Bengals in their first 2 games, especially the season opener. I think Burrow has the offseason of his life, not just because he gets paid, which we're going to keep talking about that until that day comes. I just think he's going to have his best training. He's going to have his best regimen. He's going to have everything going his way. And I don't see why, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and I can't forget about Tyler Boyd. We got to show him some love. Of course, you can argue he's going to be 30. Next year, he's going into the last year of his contract on his current deal. But I still think he can prove to be one of the best slot receivers in football, which is why I don't know if the Bengals can keep him, like, for that reason past next year. So, yeah, I got to go with the Bengals at number 3. Do you guys agree with that, or do you think you got to make some room for some other big cats at number 3?
No, that's fair. I think that when you talk about the AFC, the Bengals are certainly top 3. I think you can kind of debate the merits of 1, 2, 3, and maybe even 4, but yeah, they're certainly up there.
Yeah, I don't think I think they're among that group. I think the running back situation and tight end situation are concerning, which is why I knocked them, down from my list.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, like if the tight end situation was different, maybe you make the case for being a little bit higher, but otherwise, I think we're pretty unanimous on that. Which, I mean, for a Bengals podcast, that's pretty impressive. So good for us. Like, see, look, we're in agreement. We're making all these rankings. Like that. That's the spirit of the podcast. Well, stay with us. We're going to see how long we stick with that, because we are going to finish up ranking our list. Who rounds out the spots 4 through 7 on our list? Well, stay tuned and find out when we return right here on the Strictly Stripes podcast. All right, thanks for staying with us on the Strictly Stripes podcast. So we ranked our top 3 offenses in the AFC. We have 4 more to get through because we're making our top 7. And just to fill you in, we have the Chargers at 1, which Mike picked, the Chiefs at 2, which Andrew picked, and in the spirit of a Bengals podcast, the Bengals at 3, which I picked. Before we get to pick number 4, which is going to go to Mike this time, going with our order, we're going to remind you guys to sign up for Cincinnati Football Insider. It is our subtext service that we do with you, the listener, the fan, the reader, every day. Me, Mike, and Andrew send you one, if not multiple texts a day. We have a lot of great discussion with you guys on everything related to the Bengals before it gets to social media, before it gets to the web, and before it gets to this podcast. And we engage with you guys on this podcast. To sign up, go to cleveland.com/Bengals. Click on the blue banner at the top of the page. It's a 2-week free trial to start. After that, it's $4.99 a month. And make sure you sign up for our Strictly Stripes newsletter. Go to cleveland.com/newsletters and select the Strictly Stripes newsletter. It's free. It's in your inbox every morning, and you get all the reporting from me, Mike, and Andrew. So without further ado, Mike, who do you have as the number 4 best passing attack in the AFC?
Well, yeah, I think the Dolphins are going to be up there. Obviously Tua had all those injury scares, and I think that really hurt them last year. Hopefully that's all behind him. Assuming he's healthy, there's nobody in the league with team speed that matches the Dolphins. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. They draft Andrew's guy, A-Chain, running back. They were 4th in passing as it was last year, and that was with all the injuries they had with Tua and the scary moments. And so if he has a full season, stays upright, I think that could be in a pretty impressive offense. Obviously, their coaching situation, too, in terms of, finding a guy that can maximize offensive talent. And Mike McDaniel, I think, is pretty good. So I had them as, the kind of the next one.
So that's... So before I kind of say what I'm going to say, Andrew, like, what do you think? Like, do you think the Dolphins should be a little lower? I mean, I think we can all agree on the receivers. I like that, what you mentioned with Tyreek Hill, and obviously I love the Devin A-Chain pick, but do you trust Tua enough to stay healthy to where you can put the Dolphins at 4 versus like maybe 6 or 7, or if not lower?
Yeah, it's I wouldn't have picked the Dolphins if I had that pick. I think, kind of. It's hard to make that declaration for me without really knowing what's going on at quarterback. And I understand it was a lot of injury related stuff, but again, I'm just not sure. Like, I think Tua's fine as a starter, but yeah, he has incredible receivers, in Tyreek and in Waddle. But again, does that kind of outweigh what might be, an average quarterback situation? I don't know. I already kind of made that, that pick with my Chiefs pick. I just think, with Mahomes, with the quarterback play, you can really kind of overcome a lot in terms of your passing offense. So yeah, I would kind of bump the Dolphins down. I just don't think that they're ready to make that leap unless Tua does. But if Tua does make that leap, like if Tua can be, a Pro Bowl level player or even just a really good player, I mean, that offense is going to be really, really good.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, they have faith in Tua. They extended his 5th-year option, so he's going to be there through at least the 2024 season. So, he's not entering a contract year in this case. So they clearly have faith that he can stay well and he can stay performing well, like if he stays healthy, obviously. And I mean, it sucks for a guy like that because, like, we were at that Bengals game when, he had the first concussion he suffered this season. Or I guess was that the first or second? Did he already have one before that? Before the Bengals game?
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah.
Yeah, that was the one where he got hit because the week before they played the Bills in Miami, and he got up and he was all, new baby deer legs, and he couldn't really walk, and he like fell down, and they said it was a back injury, and they said that was kind of the reason that, that he was out. And I remember going into that game, everybody, well, if he gets another hit like that, that could be bad. And what do you know? So yeah, it wasn't great.
Yeah, I know that was.
So technically, I think it was his first one, but I think you can kind of figure out what happened there.
And the point is, like, it just sucks. Like, it doesn't take away from his talent. Like, I'm with you and I'm with Mike on saying, I think Tua still. Would I put him as a top 5 quarterback in the AFC? Probably not. But like, do I think he's good enough to get the Dolphins over the hump? Sure. We will just have to wait and see. But Andrew, you're going to take the floor for this one. Who is the 5th best passing attack in the AFC?
Yeah, I'm cool with taking the Bills here. Again, I think Josh Allen is kind of in that mold with Burrow, and I think you could probably throw Herbert in there too. I think you can rank them as you wish, but I think that they're kind of grouped together, obviously kind of in like another tier behind Mahomes. But Josh Allen is a very good quarterback. He's one of the league's best. You got a guy who can throw it a mile. He kind of had a bum elbow last year, and I'm kind of curious to see how he rebounds in 2023, just because, again, we don't really know how much that impacted him. He still threw for, almost 4,300 yards, had 35 touchdowns, and Stephon Diggs is really good. I think the reason they're this low, despite having, a pretty talented number 1 receiver and a quarterback like they do, is that I have questions about their second and third options. I have it up right now. Gabe Davis, 48 catches, 836 yards. Dawson Knox, 48 catches, 517 yards. Isaiah McKenzie, 42 catches, 423 yards. Like, none of those guys like strike fear into you. I know one of the reasons that they drafted Kincaid was that, Kincaid can play in the slot and you can kind of bump him out. And I don't think they necessarily looked at it as, okay, here's this tight end that's going to, I just think they were like, we need to get somebody that can help out Josh Allen here. So I think, when you look at Diggs and Davis and Knox and Kincaid, I like those guys in terms of what they can give Josh Allen. I think the upside is kind of there. I have questions about Gabe Davis and kind of how high he can climb. With Kincaid, if he turns into a good option, then the Bills' offense might be better than it was a year ago, especially with a healthy Josh Allen. But I think ranking them at 5 is probably too low. Like I said, I would have probably put them 4. I think that if you had a number 2 receiver, you're probably not any higher, just because it's hard to put them above the Bengals and the Chargers and the Chiefs. But I think you'd feel better about them at number 4 otherwise. So, I mean, for now, I'll take them at 5.
What do you think, Mike? Would you take them at 5, or would you rank them a little higher, like Andrew alluded to?
Well, obviously not, since I drafted the Dolphins ahead of them. We saw them, and obviously they were kind of down on their luck after everything that happened. But just options-wise, it seems like they're much more limited than the other offenses above them with their personnel groupings. I think Kincaid will be an important piece for them. Diggs is an interesting receiver just because he's so combustible that, you saw him on the sideline kind of getting frustrated in that playoff game. Does he last the season without having any more incidents? It's just he gets frustrated when the ball's not going his way, and it should a bunch because they don't have any other receivers. But I just think that in terms of, if you're ranking quarterbacks, sure, I think Allen is above Tua. But if you're ranking offenses, I just don't see how, in terms of, what Tyreek Hill did, what Waddle did last year, you'd put, the Bills ahead of them.
And yeah, honestly, like, I was just going to say that about Stephon Diggs. Like, he still hasn't shown up for voluntary workouts, which, granted,
that doesn't matter, though.
I don't know, though. I don't know.
Muhammad, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It does when he basically, like, walked out of the – it was like, what, after the game that we mentioned, the playoff game, he, like, walked out of the tunnel on his own. They'd tell him, hey, like, you got to go to the locker room. And like, he tried to walk out on his own.
Yeah, okay. So here's the thing, though. I will forgive pretty much any behavior by any Bills player from that Bengals game through the end of the season, because everything that they had to go through, it was a very emotional few weeks for them.
Sure.
They were very,
That's a fair point.
You heard this kind of after the fact. I think Mike brought this up. Mike brought this up immediately after that. The Bengals just in our postgame pod. I mean, the Bills just didn't have that juice with them in that game. It just kind of felt like they didn't really have the energy. And then you kind of hear the breakdown day quotes of all the players, like, we were exhausted. Like, the last few weeks with the DeMar stuff really killed us. And I don't know. I'm not going to read anything into the voluntary workouts. I'm not going to read anything into the end of the game stuff. Because, I mean, he was pissed. You lose a playoff game, you're alled to be pissed.
Right. That wasn't the first time he's done it, and he forced himself out of Minnesota.
He has a
that
reputation.
Was the point that if that's all you have with your number one receiver and the things aren't going well, will he get frustrated next year too? It's not just one incident. It's not that game, because I agree with you that game shouldn't be indicative of how he was feeling. But I just think in general, that's a tough spot for them to just have that one guy there, and you're going to need to kind of make him happy because you really don't have anything else.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew makes a fair point. Like, we can't even imagine what they went through, and I still can't even imagine that. But I mean, it's just him specifically. I mean, I'm pretty sure in Minnesota, you look at the sideline where he would not get a catch, he throw his helmet, get pissed. I mean, nothing against the guy. It's just, again, like Mike said, that's just kind of a tough situation. But I think that's a fair point. I mean, they could be higher. Obviously, they're not. So we are going to move to number 6. I was torn on this one, and I want to hear your all's reaction to this before we get to the 7th and final one. But I'm going to put the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 6. I really like Trevor Lawrence. I like what he did last year, especially rebounding from, it was a 3-7 start, and then they basically win, 6 of their last 7 games. They finished the year 9-8, sneak into the playoffs, have that amazing comeback against the Chargers and what was otherwise a horrible game up to that point before they made that comeback. I mean, you still got Travis Etienne. They just picked Tank Bigsby, who I think we picked him on one of our mock drafts at one point when we did the joint drafts on the podcast. I mean, they got Tank Bigsby behind him, Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley's going to finally play again this year after his whole ordeal that suspended him last year. They got Zay Jones. They still have Evan Ingram. I know they lost Marvin Jones, but that's why you have Zay Jones, who kind of makes up for that. One Jones for the other. So, yeah, I don't know. I really think I don't want to put Lawrence in the Burrow, Allen, Mahomes category, but if there was a tier after that, I would put him at the top of that tier, and I really like the weapons he has. I do think Christian Kirk's a little overpaid, but with what he's done in that offense, I could be wrong. I mean, he was their best receiver last year. So yeah, I think the Jaguars, in my opinion, are the favorite to win the AFC South. No disrespect to C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson, and I'm not going to talk about the Titans because that's another conversation. But yeah, I think the Jaguars are still the favorite in that division. I think the offense is going to be even better. I mean, do you guys think that's fair, or do you think you would have probably had someone else like the Ravens higher at number 6?
I think at this point you can probably have a rotating door. I think that there's another team who I think Mike might pick at 7, so I don't want to tip my hand here. But I think that when you look at the Jaguars, certainly, I mean, you have Calvin Ridley coming back. He's coming back from his suspension. You have Trevor Lawrence. If Trevor Lawrence makes that leap, I mean, I don't think, and kind of what everybody thinks he could be, I don't think that, it's necessarily insane. His year 1 was not good. His year 2 was immeasurably better in so many different ways. 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, threw for 4,100 yards. To me, I think that if Lawrence takes another step, he's probably if he takes that next leap, probably going to be better than Tua. He's at this point in his career, he's probably going to be better than Rodgers. He's probably going to be a better passer than Lamar. I think that's a fair argument. I wouldn't have taken them at 6. I would have, depending on kind of what's there, I think you could maybe sneak them in at 7, just because, again, so much of it is unknown. But if Lawrence takes that next leap, you're going to be feeling pretty good about the Jaguars' passing attack.
Yeah, I would have taken them. They wouldn't have fallen out of this top 7. I had them as my next pick. I think what they're kind of doing around Lawrence is pretty impressive. Obviously, got another starting tackle in Antoine Harrison in the draft. So, I think that they are building in a way similar to the Bengals, where they're kind of building up those skill positions. Obviously, Lawrence is at the center of what they want to do, so they're going to win with him. And I think that's, as he goes, they go. And I think they've got a pretty good up-and-coming group there.
So who is your number 7 pick now that I took the Jaguars off your list?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of a crapshoot at this point. I think Andrew would pick Baltimore, but maybe not. I would go with a sort of an off the I don't know. I guess I'll take Baltimore.
Oh, I wouldn't take Baltimore at 7.
Wow.
Who would you take?
I would take the Jets.
I was waiting for someone to say that.
I think you take the Jets. You add Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I think Garrett Wilson kind of proved that he could be potentially like a future star in this league at receiver. You fix your offensive line a little bit. I think that you give Aaron Rodgers some time. You have Garrett Wilson. I know you move Elijah Moore, but you bring over Lazard, which is kind of hilarious that Aaron Rodgers spends all those years saying like, I can't believe the Packers never did anything for me, and then immediately he's like, well, let's just bring all my friends. They have Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb's there. But again, I just think that with Rodgers, with Garrett Wilson as your number 1, that's a really nice number 1. You have Lazard, they bring in Mecole Hardman, they bring in Randall Cobb, you still have Corey Davis. I think that's a pretty good receiving core. Ty Conklin's your tight end.
Got Breece Hall.
In terms of passing,
who's okay.
He doesn't really do much for you in the passing attack, but I think that I think
CJ Uzomah.
Yeah, well, but he's Is he gonna? He's not really gonna play that much though with Conklin, especially with the receivers.
Yeah, you never know.
But I think that the Jets are fine. The thing with the Ravens is, I think if we're doing top 7 offenses, I think in general, I'm putting them in there like really easily. They kind of make it, I think, with room to spare. I just, with you need like Lamar, I think is a way better passer than he's ever been given credit for. I think that kind of stems back to his time at Louisville. But
Louisville,
you're talking about same thing. You're talking about Odell Beckham Jr., who's coming in, who hasn't played in a year. He's going to be your number 1/number 2. Bateman, I'm really high on, but Bateman was hurt last year. Mark Andrews, one of the best tight ends in football. He's going to be really good. You've just got a lot of unknowns in that receiving core. You've got a guy coming off an injury who missed the whole year. You got a guy coming off an injury who missed entirely almost the whole year. And then you've got a rookie. And if those guys hit, the Ravens offense is going to be lethal. And we're going to have this conversation as we get towards the season. But yeah, for now, it's too much projection of, I think with the Jaguars, it's a little bit of projection of kind of things that we've seen. With the Ravens, it's projection of things that we haven't seen. You got a new offensive coordinator in there. Just really, really hard to tell.
Yeah, I think the Jets are the same way. I mean, Aaron Rodgers wasn't very good last year. Randall Cobb wasn't very good last year. How does that whole group look? I just like I like the talent the Ravens have put together. OBJ doesn't do anything for me, but I like Zay Flowers, like Andrews. Obviously the new offensive coordinator. So I like that core better going forward than I do the Jets. That's why
it's a reasonable argument. I don't think that. Yeah, I mean, when you get to this point in the game, I mean, everybody's got flaws. Even the Chargers and the Chiefs have flaws. I think when you get to this point in the game, you can kind of have a bunch of different conversations. So
we're all human. We all have flaws, right? What's that one song? I'm not even going to sing it because it's so cheesy. I think it was Hannah Montana. She's like, everyone makes mistakes. Point is, you can find, I'm not going to get into that. That's like 2006 for me. Point is, we're all human. That's all the time we have for this podcast, but just to kind of round out the list again. So number 1, we got the Chargers. Number 2, we have the Chiefs. Number 3, the Bengals. Number 4, the Dolphins. Number 5, the Bills. Number 6, I picked this, I should not be blanking, the Jaguars. And number 7, Baltimore. And I guess we'll give the Jets an honorable mention. Thanks for tuning in for this special edition of the Strictly Stripes podcast. Tune in tomorrow. We have another special edition. Lance Reisland, our special contributor, breaks down some film of the Bengals draft picks with me. It's going to be an exciting one. You don't want to miss it. But once again, for myself, Andrew and Mike, I'm Muhammad Ahmad.